Maya woke up in the morning and felt the warm sunlight coming through the crystal windows of her cave sanctuary. She had been living on Zephyr 7 for almost 10 years, ever since the day she discovered 3 dragon eggs buried deep in the volcanic mountains. Her silver hair glowed in the light as she stretched her tall elf body and listened to the sounds of the ancient caves around her. The sanctuary was her home now, her refuge from the busy and complicated galaxy beyond this world. She walked through the main cavern where her 3 dragons were resting. Ember lay coiled near the heat vents, his massive orange and gold scales shimmering like fire. His eyes opened slowly as Maya approached, and he made a deep rumbling sound that she had learned to recognize as a greeting. Storm, the midnight-colored dragon with lightning patterns on her wings, emerged from the shadows above and landed gracefully beside her friend. Sage, the smallest dragon with emerald and blue scales, walked slowly from the healing chamber where he spent most of his time meditating. Maya prepared breakfast for all 3 dragons. She combined special minerals, fresh fish from the underground lake, and rare plants that grew only in the deepest parts of the mountain. As the dragons ate, Maya checked her communication device and discovered a message waiting for her. A woman named Linda was calling for help from a human colony on a distant moon. Her voice in the message sounded scared and desperate. She explained that strange attackers had been destroying their settlement and stealing their supplies. Linda had found Maya's contact information through an underground network and was hoping the legendary elf warrior could save them. Maya knew she had to help. She had dedicated her life to protecting innocent people across the galaxy, and she could never ignore a plea for help. She began preparing for the journey immediately. First, she gathered all the supplies she would need for travel and combat. She packed medical kits, water purification tablets, and weapons she had created herself using ancient elf magic combined with modern technology. Unlike most warriors, Maya did not use guns or explosives. Her weapons were designed to disable enemies without causing unnecessary harm. She also prepared special traveling equipment for herself and the dragons. Even though her dragons could survive in the vacuum of space, Maya wanted to make sure they were as comfortable as possible during the long journey ahead. She packed extra food supplies and medical materials just in case anyone got injured. She spent several hours checking and rechecking her equipment, making sure nothing was forgotten. This was a habit she had developed over many years of dangerous missions across the galaxy. When everything was ready, Maya climbed onto Ember's back, settling into the natural hollow between his shoulder blades where she had learned to ride safely. Storm positioned herself on the left side and Sage on the right. The 3 dragons had flown together so many times that they moved like one single being. Maya gave the signal and Ember began running toward the edge of the highest cliff of the mountain. Storm and Sage ran beside him, their powerful legs pushing them forward faster and faster. At the cliff edge, all 3 dragons jumped into the air and spread their massive wings. The wind caught them and they soared upward into the sky, rising higher and higher above the volcanic plains of Zephyr 7. Maya could feel the cool air rushing past her face as they climbed through the clouds. Below them, the landscape grew smaller and smaller until she could barely see anything but white clouds surrounding them completely. As they reached the outer atmosphere, the 3 dragons began to glow with a soft blue light. This was the ancient magic that allowed them to survive in the empty vacuum of space. Maya held on tightly to Ember's neck and felt the familiar sensation of acceleration as the dragons shifted into their space-traveling mode. In moments, they were moving faster than any spacecraft, speeding through the darkness of space toward the distant moon where Linda's colony was located. During the 14-hour journey, Maya used her communication device to gather more information about the mysterious attacks. She searched through various databases and discovered something troubling. Multiple colonies in the same region had reported similar incidents over the past 3 months. Small communities were being attacked, their supplies stolen, and their communication systems damaged. It seemed like someone or some group was deliberately weakening the human presence in this entire sector of space. Maya realized this was much bigger than a simple attack on one colony. There was an organized pattern to these attacks suggesting a larger purpose. Either a powerful organization was working toward some goal, or a single strong individual had ambitions to control this entire region. Whatever the case, innocent people were suffering and dying. Maya felt a familiar burning determination rise inside her chest. She had made a promise long ago that she would use her unique gifts to help those who could not help themselves, and she would not break that promise. She thought about her life before she came to Zephyr 7. She had grown up in the grand cities of the elf worlds, surrounded by beauty and luxury. Her wealthy family had expected her to become a politician or a business owner, to marry another important elf from a noble family, and to live a comfortable, boring life. But Maya had always felt different from other elves. Something inside her wanted more than wealth and status. Something in her soul called her toward adventure and purpose. When she turned 23 years old, she made a decision that shocked her entire family. She left home without warning and traveled to Zephyr 7 on a private spacecraft. Her parents were furious and disappointed, but Maya did not care about their anger. She knew that she needed to find something real, something that actually mattered. That decision had led her to discover the dragon eggs and to become the warrior and protector she was today. Now, 10 years later, Maya was known throughout the galaxy as a legend. People whispered her name in fear and respect. Governments wanted to hire her. Dangerous criminals tried to avoid her, and ordinary people spoke of her in awe and wonder. But Maya never thought of herself as a hero or a savior. She was simply someone who tried to help people when they needed help. She used her gifts with wisdom and care, never seeking violence for its own sake. The journey through space seemed to take forever, even though Maya knew it was only 14 hours. Time moved differently when you were traveling between worlds. Finally, she could see the moon growing larger and larger in the distance. As they approached, Maya gasped at what she saw. The colony had been heavily damaged. Buildings were destroyed. Fires were still burning in several places, and she could see the wreckage of weapons and vehicles scattered across the ground. This was much worse than she had expected from Linda's message. The attackers were not just stealing supplies. They were destroying the entire colony. Maya directed the 3 dragons to descend slowly and carefully. She wanted to survey the damage before making any decisions about how to help. As they got closer to the ground, she could see that some parts of the colony were still intact. There were survivors here, people who were hiding or working to put out the fires. Maya knew that time was critical. If the attackers came back, there might not be anyone left alive to save. She guided Ember down to a clear area near what looked like the main colony buildings. Storm and Sage landed beside them, and Maya jumped down from Ember's back. She immediately ran toward the nearest building, calling out in a loud voice that she was here to help. People began emerging from hiding places, their faces filled with fear and confusion. They had never seen an elf woman with 3 enormous dragons before, and they did not know if she was a threat or a savior. Linda emerged from behind a damaged building, her face dirty and tired from fighting and helping others survive. She was a strong woman in her middle years with short brown hair and determined eyes. When she saw Maya and the 3 dragons, her expression changed from fear to hope. She ran toward Maya as fast as she could, tears streaming down her face. Behind her came other survivors, men and women and children who had hidden in underground bunkers and shelters while the attack was happening. Maya raised her hand to show she was not a threat. She spoke in a calm and gentle voice that helped the frightened people relax a little. She introduced herself and explained that she had received Linda's message and came as quickly as she could with her dragons. Linda embraced Maya, crying with relief that help had finally arrived. Maya could see the pain and exhaustion in the colony administrator's eyes. Linda explained that the attackers had struck without warning early that morning. They had destroyed power generators, cut communication lines, and stolen food supplies from the main storage facility. The worst part was that no one knew who the attackers were or what they wanted. They had arrived in 3 large spacecraft that were unlike anything the colony had seen before. The ships had advanced weapons and shielding technology that the colony's basic defenses could not damage. After destroying the important buildings and stealing supplies, the attackers had simply left, saying they would return in 3 days to take more supplies. Linda believed the attackers were planning to completely strip the colony of everything valuable, forcing the people to starve or abandon their home. Maya listened carefully to everything Linda told her. She examined the damaged buildings and studied the scorch marks left by the attackers' weapons. From these marks, she could tell a lot about the technology the attackers were using. It was not technology from any of the major civilizations that Maya knew about. It was something different, something that suggested these attackers were from a smaller group or organization with resources and ambitions. She asked Linda if anyone had managed to record any images or data about the attacking ships. Linda took her to the colony's communication center, which was heavily damaged but still partially functional. A young man named Robert was working on trying to restore the systems. He had managed to recover some video footage from security cameras before the system was destroyed. When Maya watched the footage, she saw something that concerned her deeply. The attacking ships were decorated with symbols that she recognized from her study of galactic history. These symbols belonged to a group called the Shadow Fleet, a notorious organization that had been operating in secret for many years. The Shadow Fleet was known for kidnapping people and stealing resources from colonial settlements. They were suspected of building some kind of massive space station in the outer regions of the galaxy, but no one had ever found proof of where it was located. Maya realized that Linda's colony was not being randomly attacked. It was part of a larger plan by the Shadow Fleet to gather resources and people for their mysterious project. She knew that stopping them here would not be enough. She would need to find where their main base was located and end their operation completely. But first, she needed to protect this colony from the attackers when they returned. Maya gathered Linda and the colony's main leadership group in what remained of the main hall building. She told them her plan for defending against the next attack. She explained that her 3 dragons possessed abilities far beyond what normal weapons could do. Ember could produce extremely hot flames that could melt even advanced armor. Storm could call down lightning from the sky and move faster than most spacecraft. Sage could heal injuries and use magic to repair damaged systems. Together, they would defend the colony. Maya also asked the survivors to help by gathering weapons, barricades, and anything else that could be used for defense. She asked them to work through the night to restore the colony's power systems and communication equipment. If they could get communications working again, they could call for help from nearby colonies and alert the authorities to what was happening. The survivors worked through the entire night, guided by Maya's leadership and motivated by hope that had been missing since the attack. Families worked together, men and women, young and old, all united in the goal of saving their home. Maya worked alongside them, using her strength and skills to help clear debris and repair damaged equipment. She also studied the attackers' weapon marks more carefully, creating a strategy for how to defeat them when they returned. Storm spent the night patrolling the skies above the colony, watching for any sign of approaching ships. Her keen eyes and sharp senses could detect movement from vast distances. Amber remained near the main colony buildings, his presence providing comfort to the nervous survivors. Sage moved among the injured, using his healing magic to help people recover from their wounds and injuries. By morning, many of the seriously hurt colonists were feeling much better and able to move around more easily. When the sun rose over the moon, Maya stood at the highest point of the colony and looked out toward the stars. She could see Storm circling in the sky, keeping watch. She could sense Ember and Sage moving through the colony, and she felt connected to all 3 dragons through a bond that went deeper than words or thoughts. This bond was forged through years of shared experiences and trust. The 3 dragons would follow her anywhere and fight anything to protect her, just as she would do anything to protect them. Linda approached Maya as she stood watching the horizon. The colony administrator looked stronger now, renewed by the hope that help had come. She told Maya that the entire colony was grateful for her arrival and her willingness to fight for them. Linda explained that many of the survivors had heard stories about the legendary elf warrior and her dragons, but they had never expected to actually meet her. Some of them thought she was just a myth, a story people told to give themselves hope in desperate times. Maya smiled at Linda and explained that she was real because people believed in her and needed her to be real. She told Linda that the coming battle would be difficult and dangerous, but that they would not face it alone. They had each other, they had the dragons, and they had the determination to protect their home. Maya promised that she would do everything in her power to stop the Shadow Fleet from taking anything more from this colony. As the day progressed, Maya and the survivors prepared for the attack that they knew was coming. Exactly 3 days later, as Linda had predicted, the Shadow Fleet ships appeared in the sky above the colony. Maya was standing on the tallest building when she saw them come over the horizon. 3 massive spacecraft descended toward the settlement, their dark hulls reflecting the light of the moon's sun. These were not small attack ships like she had expected. These were capital ships, the kind of vessels that could carry hundreds of soldiers and weapon systems powerful enough to destroy entire cities. Maya felt a moment of uncertainty. These ships were larger and more dangerous than she had anticipated. But then she felt Ember's presence nearby, and Storm's strong mind touching hers through their telepathic bond. Sage's calm energy flowed through her as well. The three dragons were ready for battle, and their confidence helped steady her own resolve. She sent a mental command to her dragons, and they moved into position around the colony. Ember positioned himself at the western edge of the settlement, his massive body coiled and ready to strike. Storm took to the air. Her wings spread wide as she rose higher and higher to meet the approaching ships. Sage remained near the colony's central area, ready to provide healing support and defense where it was needed most. Maya climbed onto Ember's back and prepared herself for what was about to happen. The three spacecraft began descending faster, clearly preparing to land. Maya could see weapons ports opening on their hulls, preparing to fire on the colony. But before the ships could launch their first attack, Storm struck with incredible speed. The midnight-colored dragon flew directly toward the nearest ship, her body glowing with electric blue light. As she approached, she unleashed a massive lightning bolt that struck the ship's shield systems. The lightning bolt was so powerful that it overloaded the ship's defenses for several crucial seconds. In that moment, Storm unleashed a second attack, and this time her lightning pierced through the weakened shields and struck the ship's hull directly. Alarms began blaring on the spacecraft, and it started veering away from its landing approach. The ship's pilots were fighting desperately to regain control, but Storm was too fast and too skilled. She attacked again and again, each strike carefully, designed to damage critical systems without destroying the entire vessel. Ember felt the battle beginning through his connection with Maya. The great orange and gold dragon released a roar so loud that it shook the ground beneath the colony. Flames erupted from his mouth, creating a wall of fire that reached high into the sky. The second attacking ship tried to maneuver around the flames, but Ember moved with surprising speed for such a large creature. He leaped toward the ship, and his claws raked across its hull, leaving deep scars in the metal. The third ship attempted to land near the colony's main facility. This was clearly the command ship, the one carrying the leaders of this attack. Maya directed Ember forward, and the dragon charged toward the descending vessel. As Ember ran, Maya drew her weapon, a staff of carved elf crystal that could channel magical energy. When the ship tried to open its landing ramp and deploy soldiers, Ember struck with his tail, knocking the ramp away and sending the emerging soldiers flying through the air. Sage moved swiftly through the colony, finding any residents who were injured or trapped under debris. The small dragon's green and blue scales glowed softly as he used his healing magic to mend broken bones and seal wounds. Several colonists who had been too hurt to fight suddenly found themselves able to move and help defend their home. Sage's magic was not just physical healing. It seemed to restore hope and courage to everyone he touched. The battle raged across the colony for nearly 30 minutes. Storm continued her assault on the first ship, eventually forcing it to retreat and attempt to escape into space. The ship was damaged but still functional, and it managed to break away from the battle and climb toward the upper atmosphere. Storm pursued it for a while, but she knew that her priority was protecting the colony on the ground. Ember and Maya focused on the third ship, the command vessel. Maya used her staff to launch magical attacks that disrupted the ship's systems, while Ember attacked from multiple angles, keeping the crew inside too busy with defense to launch any organized offensive. The soldiers who managed to emerge from the ship were quickly overwhelmed by colony residents who had been armed and prepared for combat. The second ship tried a different approach. It attempted to circle around and land on the far side of the colony, hoping to avoid direct confrontation with the dragons. But Maya saw this movement and directed Ember to cut off the ship's path. The orange dragon launched himself upward with a powerful leap, his wings carrying him high enough to block the ship's landing approach. The pilots, realizing they could not get past the dragon without a direct confrontation, decided to join their companion ship and retreat. Within 45 minutes, all three Shadow Fleet ships were in full retreat, climbing desperately toward space. Two of them had sustained heavy damage and were trailing smoke and sparks from their engines. The third ship, the one that Storm had attacked, was barely functional and seemed to be struggling to maintain power. As the ships disappeared above the atmosphere, the colonists erupted in cheers and celebration. Maya stood on top of Ember and watched the ships disappear into the darkness of space. She knew that this battle was just the beginning. The Shadow Fleet would not give up so easily. They would report what had happened to their superiors, and they would likely send a larger force next time. But for now, the colony was safe. The people who had lived in fear just days ago could finally breathe again. Linda rushed toward Maya as soon as Ember landed. The colony administrator's face was filled with gratitude and amazement. She embraced Maya, telling her that the colony would never forget what she had done. Other survivors gathered around, expressing their thanks and wonder at the power of the dragons. Children reached out to touch Sage's scales, and the small dragon's gentle nature put them at ease. But Maya knew she could not stay at the colony for long. She had learned important information about the Shadow Fleet's operation, and she needed to act on it quickly. She told Linda that she would leave 2 days after the battle to search for the Shadow Fleet's main base. She explained that stopping them here was not enough. They needed to find where the fleet was building their mysterious station and shut down the entire operation. Only then could the colonies in this region truly be safe. 2 days after the battle, Maya prepared for her journey to find the Shadow Fleet's main base. Robert, the young technician who had worked on restoring the colony's communications, had managed to extract data from the retreating ship's systems. The data contained partial navigation records that might help Maya track where the fleet was based. Robert showed her the coordinates and explained that the signals seemed to be coming from a region of space known as the Outer Nebula, a vast cloud of gas and dust that made navigation difficult and concealed objects from long-range sensors. Linda walked with Maya to where the dragons were waiting for departure. She thanked Maya again for saving the colony, but she also expressed concern about the danger Maya would face in searching for the Shadow Fleet's base. Linda knew from the stories that the legendary elf warrior was capable of incredible things, but she also knew that the Shadow Fleet was a large organization with many soldiers and powerful weapons. The colony administrator offered Maya whatever supplies and information the colony could provide. Maya accepted the offer gratefully. She took detailed maps of the Outer Nebula region, information about reported Shadow Fleet activities in surrounding areas, and a small device that could track the energy signatures of the retreating ships. The people of the colony gathered to say goodbye to Maya and her dragons. Many of them wanted to touch the dragons or speak to Maya personally, wanting to thank her one more time. Children left gifts of food and flowers at Ember's feet, and the great dragon accepted their affection with patience and gentleness. When it was finally time to leave, Maya climbed onto Ember's back as she always did. Storm and Sage took their positions beside him. The 3 dragons turned toward the open space beyond the colony, and with powerful leaps they launched into the air. The colonists watched them fly higher and higher until the dragons and their rider disappeared into the upper atmosphere. Then there was silence, broken only by the wind and the distant sound of the twin suns. The journey into the Outer Nebula took nearly 2 full days of continuous flying. As they got closer to the region, the space around them became increasingly filled with gas and dust. The 3 dragons had to slow their speed and navigate more carefully, using their ancient magic to sense their way through the thick clouds. Maya watched her surroundings constantly, using the tracking device to follow the energy signatures of the Shadow Fleet ships. The Outer Nebula was a strange and beautiful place, filled with colors that ranged from deep purples to bright oranges. Great clouds of gas twisted and swirled around them like cosmic winds. Within the nebula, they occasionally passed by stellar phenomena that defied easy explanation. Stars were being born in massive clouds of material, and the birth explosions created brilliant displays of light and energy. In other places, ancient stars were dying, collapsing in on themselves in ways that warped space and time. As they traveled deeper into the nebula, Maya began to sense something unusual. There was a presence in the space around them, something large and artificial hidden within the clouds. She directed the dragons to slow down and to approach more cautiously. Ember, Storm, and Sage all felt it too through their shared bond with Maya. There was danger here, but also opportunity. They were getting close to what they were searching for. After several more hours of careful navigation, they finally saw it. Rising from behind a massive cloud of cosmic dust was a structure unlike anything Maya had ever encountered. It was enormous, easily the size of a small moon. The station was clearly still under construction, with scaffolding covering much of its surface and countless ships moving around it in organized patterns. This was the Shadow Fleet's secret project, the massive space station they had been constructing in hidden locations throughout the outer regions of space. Maya realized immediately why the Shadow Fleet had been attacking colonies and stealing supplies. They needed resources to build this enormous station. She studied the structure carefully, trying to understand its purpose. It seemed to be designed as some kind of massive fortress or command center, but its configuration suggested additional purposes that she could not immediately determine. Whatever it was, it represented a significant threat to the safety of the entire region. Maya carefully maneuvered the dragons into a position where they could observe the station without being detected. Storm flew high above, using her keen senses to scan the activity below. Ember waited in the shadows of nearby gas clouds, ready to move quickly if needed. Sage used his magical abilities to keep the three of them hidden from the station's detection systems. What they learned from their observation was both encouraging and concerning. The station had limited defense systems. Most of the crews were focused on construction rather than military preparation. This meant that the Shadow Fleet was not expecting any serious opposition to their project. They believed they were too well hidden and too powerful for anyone to challenge them. However, the station's workers numbered in the thousands, and there were at least 20 military ships stationed nearby for protection. A direct assault would be risky and could result in massive casualties. Maya knew that she could not defeat such a large force with just herself and her 3 dragons. She needed help from the authorities and from other colonies in the region. She needed to gather evidence and present it to the organizations that were responsible for maintaining peace and order in the galaxy. She directed the dragons to carefully approach the station and collect information, recording images and data that could prove the existence of this secret construction project. For 2 hours, Maya and her dragons gathered information from a safe distance. Storm used her exceptional eyesight to count ships and map their positions. Ember observed the construction patterns and the flow of materials being delivered to the station. Sage used his connection to the surrounding space to understand the energy systems that powered the station. They documented everything, creating a complete picture of what the Shadow Fleet was building and how they were planning to use it. When they had gathered sufficient information, Maya directed the dragons to retreat from the station. It was time to return to civilization and share what they had discovered with the authorities who could actually do something about it. As they flew away from the outer nebula, Maya felt a mixture of emotions. She was excited about stopping the Shadow Fleet's project, but she also felt uncertain about whether the authorities would believe her or take action quickly enough to matter. The journey from the outer nebula back to the main human colonial territory took 3 days of hard flying. Maya knew that time was critical. The Shadow Fleet could complete their station at any moment, and once it was fully operational, it would become nearly impossible to stop them. She directed the dragons toward the capital world of the Human Colonial Federation, a planet called Unity Prime, where the main governmental buildings and military headquarters were located. When they arrived at Unity Prime, Maya went directly to the military headquarters and demanded to speak with someone in authority. The guards at first refused to let her inside, not recognizing her and viewing her as a potential threat. But when she explained that she had information about a massive illegal construction project by the Shadow Fleet, the guards decided to contact their commanding officer. Within an hour, Maya found herself in a large meeting room facing 5 high-ranking military officers and 3 government officials. Maya presented all the information and images she had gathered at the Shadow Fleet station. She explained how the colonies were being attacked, how people were being taken as slaves, and how resources were being stolen. She described the enormous space station and its military capabilities. The officials listened carefully, but Maya could see skepticism in some of their faces. They told her that they would investigate her claims, but they needed more concrete evidence before they could authorize a military operation. Maya felt frustration rising inside her, but she controlled it. She understood that governments moved slowly and that without proper evidence and procedures, they might not be able to act quickly, so she offered them a proposal. She would lead a military task force back to the Shadow Fleet station to gather more detailed evidence and to observe their current operations. The military could send experienced soldiers with her, and together they would create an irrefutable record of the Shadow Fleet's activities. The military officers were impressed by Maya's willingness to help and by the information she had already gathered. They agreed to her proposal, and within 12 hours a military expedition was being prepared. 20 experienced soldiers were selected for the mission, along with the latest surveillance equipment and weapons. The group assembled on the landing platform where Maya and her 3 dragons were waiting. The soldiers' faces showed a mixture of awe and nervousness as they approached the dragons. Many of them had heard stories about Maya and her dragons, but seeing them in person was a different experience entirely. Ember was so large that he dwarfed the biggest military vehicle on the platform. Storm moved with such grace and power that the soldiers instinctively stepped back to give her space. Sage was smaller, but his presence seemed to fill the entire platform with calm and peace. Maya explained to the soldiers that they would need to ride with her on the dragons. She assigned the most experienced soldiers to ride with Ember, with her acting as guide. Others would ride with Storm and Sage. The soldiers were nervous about this, as many of them had never seen a dragon before, let alone ridden one. But they trusted in the leadership of their commanders and in the legendary reputation of Maya and her companions. The journey back to the outer nebula with the military forces took 4 days instead of 2, because the soldiers and their equipment slowed down the dragon's travel speed. But when they finally arrived at the station, they were able to gather even more detailed information than before. The soldiers set up observation posts at multiple locations around the station, using advanced surveillance equipment to document everything happening there. What they discovered was even more disturbing than Maya's initial observations. The Shadow Fleet was not just building a military station, they were creating a prison complex that could hold tens of thousands of enslaved workers. Ships were arriving regularly with groups of people kidnapped from colonies throughout the region. These people were being forced to work on the station's construction without any hope of escape or rescue. The military officers back on Unity Prime were deeply disturbed by this information. They realized that the Shadow Fleet had become a genuine threat to the entire region, and that immediate action was necessary. They began gathering a military fleet to launch an assault on the Shadow Station, but they warned Maya that the operation would take at least 2 weeks to prepare, and they asked her to continue observing the station and protecting the observation posts until the fleet arrived. However, things changed dramatically when the Shadow Fleet detected the military observation posts. Massive alarms began sounding throughout the station, and ships started moving into attack positions. Maya realized that they had been discovered and that the military forces would be attacked before the backup fleet could arrive. She knew that she had to protect the soldiers under her command and buy them time to escape. Maya directed Ember to move the observation post from his location into a defensive position. Storm gathered the soldiers and equipment from her post and flew them to a safe distance from the station. Sage worked frantically to heal the injuries of soldiers who had been wounded in the initial encounter with Shadow Fleet patrol ships. But despite these efforts, it was clear that the small military force could not defend against the enormous station and its many ships. Then something extraordinary happened. As the Shadow Fleet ships closed in on the military position, other ships began appearing at the edges of the nebula. Ships from other human colonies, from elf worlds, and from neutral trading stations throughout the region were arriving. Linda had sent a distress signal when she heard that Maya was in danger, and it had been received and relayed throughout the nearby colonies. People from dozens of different worlds, people who had heard stories about Maya and her dragons, had decided to join the fight against the Shadow Fleet. Within hours, a massive battle was raging throughout the outer nebula. Military ships fought against Shadow Fleet vessels in coordinated battles. Maya and her 3 dragons became the focal point of the resistance, inspiring the Allied forces with their incredible power and courage. Ember destroyed entire squadrons of attacking ships with his flames. Storm called down lightning that disabled enemy vessels. Sage kept the Alliance forces fighting at full strength despite their injuries. The battle lasted for an entire day and night, with ships exploding and warriors fighting with desperate determination. But in the end, the Alliance forces prevailed. The Shadow Fleet's command structure was shattered, their military ships were destroyed or fleeing, and the enslaved workers were liberated. The massive space station was captured intact, its construction halted forever. When the battle ended and the smoke cleared, Maya stood among the surviving soldiers and Allied warriors. They looked at her with gratitude and reverence, understanding that without her courage and her dragons, they would all have been defeated. Maya looked at Ember, Storm, and Sage, and the 3 dragons looked back at her with the same devotion. Together they had saved an entire region from tyranny and oppression. Together they had proven that one warrior with determination and true companions could change the fate of thousands. And so the legend of Maya and her 3 dragons grew even greater, spreading across the galaxy to inspire hope in the hearts of all those who heard their story.